been living under a rock, Netflix finally wised up and gave the people what we wanted with a group of black shows returning to our TV screens, including my absolute favorite, Girlfriends. This show hits much different as an adult than it did when I was 10 years old. I was so excited to relive moments with Joan, Toni, Maya, and Lynn, and what I love about this show is how each girlfriend style told the story about who they were at that particular point in their life, which is accurate for most women. We go through different phases, life situations, and the clothes that we wear, our hairstyles, and all of that changes to reflect where we're at. Each girlfriend was so different, and if you're anything like me, you find yourself relating to one or more of the characters. With that said, let's go through each girlfriend style and how it evolved over the show's 8 seasons. So just a little background in case you're new to the fandom. Girlfriends was basically the black version of Sex and the City, but in my opinion, better and much more relatable for several reasons. The show ran for 8 seasons from the year 2000 to 2008 and followed 4 close friends in LA. Joan Clayton Esquire, the successful lawyer who was the mother of the group. Toni Childs, the real estate entrepreneur who was bad and bougie before that was even a thing. Think of her as the early 2000s Hillary Banks. Then we had the sassy single mother Maya Wilkes, who the show's costume designer Stacy Beverly describes as the around-the-way girl, and we saw her go from struggling assistant to successful authoress by the end of the show. By the way, I'll be referencing this amazing interview I found with Stacy quite a few times throughout this video from the website newnude.com. Last but not least is Lynn Searcy, the free-spirited friend who had 11 degrees but could never hold a job for more than a week. She never wanted to be tied down by society's conventional idea of who she should be, and whether she was making documentaries or serving as the lead singer to a trip-hop band, her style reflected that. Another element I'd like to point out is how the neighborhoods that they lived in also shaped who they were overall. Joan lived near the Larchmont neighborhood, Toni lived in where else but Beverly Hills, Maya is from Compton, and Lynn lived in all the girlfriends' homes for a little bit, except for Toni. But for a period, she lived in Echo Park, and I think that was the most reflective of her personality. Now, if you're from LA, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Each neighborhood had its own distinct vibe, which lent to each of the characters. Now let's dive deeper into each of the girlfriends' style. Starting with Joan, played by our fave Tracee Ellis Ross, daughter of the legendary Diana Ross. Tracee revealed on Twitter that most of her clothes worn on the show's first season came from her own closet. This was mainly due to the fact that black shows had lower budgets than their white counterparts, which had budgets 2 to 3 times larger. And unfortunately, not much has changed since those days. With that said, though, the costume designers had to DIY most of the cast's wardrobe, and if you're an avid fan, you'll notice that, just like in real life, the girlfriends' characters would swap clothes and repeat outfits. To me, that's a part of what made it so realistic and relatable, because that's what we do. We mix and match pieces, unlike shows like Sex and the City where Carrie would wear a $500 Manolo Blahnik heel once and you'd never see it again. No shade to them, I love Carrie, Miranda, and them, but again, it's just not as relatable. Now let's get into Joan's style analysis. In the first few seasons, she was a successful lawyer and certainly dressed the part. She stayed in a power suit, honey. She was known to rock a monochromatic moment a handful of times, and Joan's chic ensembles made it slightly easier to look past her neurotic personality. She always kept it classy, yet trendy in every style you can think of, from pencil skirts to high-waisted pants. Even though she kept it professional at work, Sis knew how to turn it out for a night out on the town with the girls. She was not afraid to wear bold pops of color, statement jewelry, and other accessories. She had a gorgeous hourglass figure and was not afraid to show it off, as we saw in the show's very first episode, where Toxic Toni showed up to her house party with Joan's ex on her arm. But that's a story for another day. Today we're just focused on the fashion. At the end of season 4, Joan discovered that Lynn forgot to mail in her fashion school application and starts to question if she was right to pursue a law career. She ultimately loses passion and decides to quit the law firm to open a tapas bar called the J-Spot. We then saw her style loosen up from those angry white woman suits, as Toni called them, to more easy, breezy, colorful styles, wrap dresses, statement jewelry, and sky-high stilettos. I also want to note that a substantial amount of scenes took place in Joan's house, and I want to give kudos to the show for keeping it real and showing Joan at home wearing robes, cargo pants, tank tops with no bra, and other loose-fitting items that we all wear when we're just chilling at home. I never understood shows that have people sitting at their kitchen table in jeans and fully accessorized. Like, no one dresses like that in real life. So another testament to a job well done by the Girlfriends wardrobe team. Next is Antoinette Marie Childs, aka Toni, the self-proclaimed cute one of the group. Toni and Joan are childhood friends who grew up together in Fresno, California. You would think someone who grew up poor and on a farm would be humble, but she is anything but. Toni is that chick decked out in designer labels from head to toe and expensive taste to boot. In many ways, we can see how Toni felt like she had a lot to prove and overcompensated for her upbringing in the form of her materialism. According to the show's costume designer Stacy Beverly, Toni wanted to flaunt everything she'd earned, so her looks are trendy, expensive, and eye-catching. In those first few seasons, we lived for her early 2000s looks. I mean, who could forget Toni in that cropped, buttoned baby blue cardigan and matching choker? She also slayed a sleeveless mock neck with no bra like no one else, and no one could rock a cowl neckline like her. This is one of those staple silhouettes of the early 2000s. In that same episode I mentioned earlier where she showed up to Joan's house with her ex Charles, she gave us the legendary line, "Do not let this Prada fool you," when refraining herself from fighting with Maya. This was when Maya was just Joan's assistant and before they all became a unit. Toni knew how to use what she had to get what she wanted and had the assets to do so. No matter what was going on in her life, as long as she looked good, she was content. Even when she reached her lowest points emotionally and financially with her car repossessed, friendships on the line, she still found a way to buy a $17,000 Hermes Kelly bag. Yes, from the same brand that makes the Birkin bags that the girls are going crazy for these days. When Toni decides to open up her own real estate office, we see her style shift from slinky, sexy tops and dresses to a sleek and more professional persona. The real test Toni adopted a uniform of tailored blazers and trousers and contrasted those with feminine blouses and sophisticated form-flattering pencil skirts. Miu Miu heels and Louboutins were non-optional, and she even had a closet to die for, of course. In fact, when she found out she was pregnant with her daughter Morgan, she mourned the fact that her swollen feet would no longer fit her heels anymore. Now that I'm older, I can see how her narcissism was really just a cover-up for her many insecurities. When she got engaged to Dr. Todd Garrett, she stepped into the wife role and started wearing more feminine dresses. One particular favorite of mine was at the cake tasting when she wore this strapless polka dot tea-length dress. Even though Toni always looked fabulous on the outside, she's a classic example of the phrase, "all that glitters ain't gold," because she was extremely troubled in all areas of her life, from her family life, relationship troubles, and the various falling outs with Joan. The many falling outs with Joan. Toni truly walked so Molly from Insecure could run. Next is Maya Oh Hell No Wilkes. According to Stacy Beverly, quote, "Maya was sort of the roundaway girl. She could put together an outfit from anywhere, whether it be from a department store or the flea market. She had a kid and husband, so she was always piecing together items, but she also had girlfriends, so you might see her in something high-end that she borrowed from one of them," end quote. Maya started out as Joan's assistant at the law firm and soon became her confidant and close friends with the rest of the group after showing Toni that she couldn't walk all over her. As her assistant, she dressed as you would expect an office assistant would, in pencil skirts, trousers, and blouses, as well as sheath dresses. But she always made sure to add in her personality through pops of color and subtle prints. Maya was also known to rock jewel tones on several occasions, and I loved her in a ruby red, I must say. In the beginning, Toni made several digs at Maya, calling her low rent, amongst other classes and egregious terms. I personally think Toni had something against her because Maya reminds her of where she came from and what she desperately tried to be the opposite of. Either way, Maya was that down-to-earth girlfriend that you couldn't help but love. Similar to Toni, her style in the earlier seasons was very telling of the times, the early 2000s, and we saw her rocking casual styles like halter tops with jeans, brightly colored turtlenecks, and boot-cut jeans. And like real-life girlfriends, there were several occasions where she wore pieces from Joan's closet. According to costume designer Stacy, quote, "The giving away and exchanging of items like we do in real life was very intentional. We would take basic items and restyle them, pair them with a jacket the next time or different bottoms. Also, our budget was not very big in comparison to other shows, so we had to make the most of it," end quote. She starts out the show as a married woman, but after an affair in season 2 with a man named Stan, she becomes a single mother who eventually finds her way back into the dating scene and begins showing a more softer, feminine side in figure-flattering skirts, flowy tops, and flaunting her figure in sultry, form-fitting dresses. In season 5, Maya releases her book, Oh Hell Yes, and steps into a new season in her life as a published authoress and entrepreneur who even holds her own seminar. Throughout the show's 8 seasons, we saw Maya come a long way from just being Joan's assistant and taking her calls, and we saw her style become more polished and refined. Eventually, and spoiler alert in case you haven't seen it yet, her and Darnell get back together when she speaks her piece at his wedding and steps into the wife role again. We saw her wear a lot of girly get-ups like peplum tops, cold shoulder details, ruching, and flirty dresses. Maya always stayed that down-to-earth girlfriend, and throughout the series, we see her grow into a more elevated and polished version of herself. Last but certainly not least is Lynn Searcy, the artsy, carefree girlfriend. She had 5 degrees and lived with Joan for 8 years while she was trying to figure life out and what path she wanted to take. Yes, you heard me right, 8 years. Joan was definitely an enabler, but I digress. Back to the fashion. In the words of Stacy, quote, "Lynn had more of an eclectic, bohemian style mixed with a little bit of rock and roll. She also wore a lot of black," end quote. Lynn was a free spirit, and you saw that throughout her style right off the bat. In the first few seasons, she wore a lot of boho layered looks, and she was known for wearing crop tops and sleeveless tops that revealed her many tribal tattoos. Now, I have to say, I love that the show allowed her to express her true self because it was very authentic to the actress who played her, the beautiful Persia White, who was also a vegan and was a musician just like her character was. Throughout the seasons, she was also known to wear bold, funky prints. When her adoptive parents came into town and threatened to cut her off financially, forcing her to get a job, Lynn stated that she felt like a piece of her died when she saw herself in a corporate office outfit. Of course, that job didn't last long before she was onto her next odd gig. Like Stacy mentioned, she did wear a lot of black, and her style evolved into a boho, gothic, grunge style, if you will, which she alternated between that, and eventually in the later seasons, we saw her style develop into a more elevated version of that bohemian look, with outfits like draped skirts with stiletto boots, ponchos with fitted jeans, and neutral-toned matching sets. By the final season, season 8, Lynn ended up looking more refined and chic, but still very true to her boho style. According to Stacy, quote, "There was always that underlying style arc and evolution. Mara Akil, the show's creator, had the vision for who these women would become, and we built the style direction around that. I tried not to use any clothing that was too trendy unless the script called for it, because when you look back on the episodes, you'll know it's not timeless. I tried to use garments that are classic, maybe with a little flair or in an interesting color. I wanted to make sure the pieces were clean and exclusive," end quote. Overall, the majority of styles the girlfriends wore can still be worn to this day, and that's a testament to how great of a costume designer Stacy Beverly was to capture the essence of each of the girlfriends, showcasing their evolution and growth as women throughout the duration of the show, while serving us looks that can still be worn 20 plus years later and seen as classic and chic. So tell me what you think about this video down below. Thank you so much for watching. I want to hear from you. Tell me which of the girlfriends was your favorite. Whose style did you love the most? In my mind, personally, I like to think I'm a Toni, but in reality, I'm more of a mix between Joan and Maya. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you back here next time.